Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Mentor Minutes. Just a chance for real-world leaders to ask and get answers for real-world problems and situations. We try to take the theory and the principles behind leadership and give you some step-by-steps for putting them into action in your real-life situations. So I start these questions off with some things that I got offline or that I didn't get a chance to get to in the last episode. And I wanted to start off with Queen, one of my favorite names from yesterday's episode, who snuck in a question just as I was signing off in regards to micromanagement. And that was, is there ever a good time to do micromanagement? How do you manage that? And so it's a great question, and it is a struggle for most leaders. Now, I'll go ahead and start this off by saying that micromanagement, when they do survey after survey of why people are dissatisfied with their jobs or why they are leaving a particular position, they almost always key in on micromanagement as one of the top, if not the top, on almost any one of these surveys. So micromanagement is a bad thing from a leadership perspective. Now, we're talking reality here, and that is that most leaders got their job by being exceptional at their own individual work and controlling the outcome of their own individual work. And so what that does is when you move into leadership, you have a natural tendency to not delegate. That's why it's always a constant struggle, and to try to get into the details of everything that's going on, because that's what you were rewarded for in the past. That's the reason that micromanagement is such a struggle, is because we want to have our finger on the pulse of everything that is going on. Michelle, great to see you here from Texas. And so that's where the struggle comes in. I don't see micromanagement as necessarily a problem, but you have to manage it. And the easiest way to manage your micromanagement so that you are aware of the details that's going on in the operation, but you are away from it enough to where you can handle your own priorities, and you can also let your team develop. Okay, that's part of the struggle with it, is that you have your own things to work on and your team needs to develop. So micromanaging them kind of cuts down on your ability to do both of those things. The quick way of handling micromanagement is to schedule it. When you schedule your micromanagement, you're now managing it. And by nature, you're seeing where it fits into your calendar and how much of your time it takes. And what I mean by scheduling your micromanagement is that you may take a look at one particular procedure every Tuesday. And so you're doing a deep dive into how something is actually done in the operation. You may take a couple of employees and do a deep dive into how they actually work and how they process one particular process. That allows you to stay in touch with the details. If you have projects that are going on, schedule updates. That allows you to keep a pulse on what's going on. That allows you an opportunity to give feedback, but it limits the amount of time that you're doing that. And so if you want to get out of micromanagement, and I definitely recommend that in general you do, but it does have a place. You don't want to be so distant from the operation you don't know what's going on. Macro management has its own issue. Then go ahead and schedule what's going on, and then you won't get trapped into staying over somebody's shoulder and working the project for them. Great question to start us out, Queen. I wish I would have gotten to it yesterday for you. As we've had people jump on, drop down into the comment section, just ask your questions, and we'll go ahead and field those. I also always encourage everybody to chime in with their own thoughts on dealing with some of these questions that we're dealing with. I don't pretend to have all the answers, and I know that all of us are way smarter than one of us is. So, next question came in through email, and it was, what happens when your boss targets a particular employee for termination? And you've already gone through some of the counseling steps as far as the behavior is concerned, and you're already limiting the contact that this person has. Now, assuming you want to keep the employee, and that's my assumption with this, because in a lot of cases, unfortunately, employees just don't work out. You can try your best for them, you can coach them, you can get them extra training, you can get them extra help. And sometimes it's just not going to work out. Sometimes the person has all the potential in the world, but just isn't ready personally to recognize that potential, and so they fall by the wayside. So assuming you're looking to keep them, one thing that I keyed in that I did was slightly concerning, and I wanted to dive in just a little bit more to, and that is limiting their exposure to your boss. And while yes, you want to do that, you do want to set them up for success. All right, so Yes, you limit it, but you also look for those opportunities where, it's a pitch right down the center and they can just hit it out of the park. Something that's a strength of theirs, something where they can shine, where you can get them the right exposure. So limit bad exposure, or maybe exposure in general, but highlight and try to get them exposure in the areas where they shine so that your boss can see the benefits. Right now, your boss is probably only seeing all the weaknesses. And for whatever reason, they just haven't seen the benefits. Or there's just a personality conflict between the two individuals. That often happens between even your boss and an employee that you have. They just have that personality conflict. So look for opportunities for them to shine. What I also want to tell you is this is a long-term process. This is not something that is going to turn around in a month and probably not in 2 months. Your best case scenario is that this turns around in about 3 months. So you're looking for ways that you can address the timeliness aspect of it. Where can you get some quick wins with this employee to show that it's turning around and that the performance and the attitude is going in the right direction? Where are some of those quick wins? Engage with the employee and try to figure out what's going on. Why aren't they living up to those expectations? Find ways to give them extra coaching. Match them up with a peer that is a superstar so that they can pick things up. John, so good to see you here, man. Things are going good on my end. But look for those opportunities where you can invest in them and give them the best chance of turning that impression around. What I also recommend is huge from a performance standpoint. Highlight that performance. And if it's an attitude issue, then great. We're not going to all get along, and not everybody can be mature enough to realize that. But highlight performance. Find a way to put performance up on the board so everybody sees it. When executives walk by, this is a big trick that I had in my departments when I was in the workforce in getting attention for what was going on. I would publicly put up what our best performing metric was. And I'd draw a little chart that went in the right direction. Every executive that ever toured our department would stop and look at that chart and ask questions about it. They're naturally attracted to charts that look like they're going in one direction or trending in a particular direction. They love that stuff. So if you can find a way to put performance up in a public place, which is something I always recommend anyways because it's a great motivation and accountability tool for your team, but it also has the effect of publicly displaying so that the executive can see where this person perhaps ranks in your department. It may be that they are completely not paying any attention to the performance aspects and are only paying attention to the fact that they have a personality difference with this person. But if they find out that that person is in the top 5 of 30 employees that you have, that can change their perspective around just a little bit. So those are some of my main recommendations. Yes, limit the exposure, but look to highlight the exposure where they have the ability to shine. If you have a boss that's targeting one of your employees for termination, find ways to coach them up. Find ways to match them up with peers so they can share best practices on what's going on. So it's not just coming from you, it's coming from different people. And then look for opportunities to publicly display some of that stuff up there. This is a long game. So look for ways to turn it around quickly, and hopefully you can see this through for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and you can go ahead and flip that executive or your boss's behavior around in regards to that employee. All right, so I'm opening up for questions. Anybody that's tuning in, anything that's been going on this past week or that's coming up this next week that you're kind of struggling with, that's on the top of your mind, that you'd love to run by me, I'm just here to help out with those particular situations. The other question that I got offline was in regards to thinking strategically. And it's a question we've all asked in our position, and that is, how can I think strategically when everything is being thrown at me and everything is going in a different direction? I love that. It's just a great question, and it's a very real question for what's going on. In today's kind of chaotic environments, and this is the downside, there's positives and negatives to the connectivity that we have. The connectivity allows us to see everything that's going on, and it allows us access to other individuals, but it also allows that access the other way. And so it's very natural, and it's quite frankly, the vast majority of workplaces today are so connected that, yeah, you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff thrown at you, and you're going to get pulled in a whole bunch of different directions by competing priorities. What I tell everybody right off the start is to get started correctly. Start your day right. You don't know what curveballs you're going to be thrown throughout the day. You don't know what directions you're going to get pulled in. You don't know what emergencies are going to come up. But if you start your day with your priorities, that's going to be something where you can then, you may not finish anything, but you can at least get it started. So when you catch 5 minutes at 11 o'clock in the morning, when you catch 10 more minutes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you can keep that ball rolling. You create that momentum behind your big projects and your big priorities. What I tell people is just start out by taking the first 15 minutes of your day, close your office door, do not open email, and get to work on your stuff. Just 15 minutes. Tell the team, send out an email the day before and say, hey, just so you know, from 8 o'clock to 8:15, my door is closed. I'm just getting rolling on a few different priorities that I have. At 8:15, I will open that door, or you can open that door for me if you have any questions that are going on. Now, obviously, if you have an emergency, pop in. And, you know, what people think is an emergency isn't necessarily an emergency, and you can coach that behavior, all right? It doesn't necessarily mean that this starts off with a bang right off the bat, but get started on your priorities, and you will see more of those priorities get across the finish line, okay? Now, for those of you that say, hey, I can't get 15 minutes, you're away at meetings, you're away at lunch. There are tons of times where you are not available to your team. Use 15 minutes to get some priorities and get yours, and bring some balance back into that equation of working in a servant leadership role and getting your stuff taken care of. The second thing is don't overschedule your day. I'm a big fan of taking your to-do list and jamming it into your calendar. I love scheduling my tasks. However, in an environment where you're going to get pulled in different directions, where something is going to come up, you may not know what it is. But setting aside a half an hour in the middle of your morning and a half an hour in the middle of your afternoon as a buffer, just an opportunity to catch back up after you've had that latest emergency or that latest crisis that you had to address. Those are those things that can kind of keep you on track and keep you in tune with your priorities and make sure that your whole day doesn't fall off the rails. Okay, so if you need to start thinking strategically, set aside some time to think strategically, and the best opportunity to do that is right at the beginning of your day before anybody else has a chance to get you going off on a different tangent. Next question comes in from Michelle. Good to see you here, Michelle. What's the best way to get skills and knowledge seen by departments that normally won't see me? The best way is to offer to help. Okay, Michelle? So offer your assistance. Hey, is there anything that my team can help you with? And you whatever your skill set is. My background, I have a lot of background in call centers. What I had was a whole bunch of people. And I had a whole bunch of people that would occasionally have time in between calls. So if you needed to process something, that was something my team could help with, some kind of just brute force sort of things. But you know, if you have marketing capacity, if you're in a marketing department, my goodness, your skills can be used everywhere in the organization. But look for opportunities to help. That's where you'll get a chance to tell people what your skills and knowledge are, and for them to actually see it. Telling somebody something is great. Actually seeing it in work, if you've ever worked with your marketing department and had them put together a presentation for you, it will blow your mind what they are able to do. I used to think I was reasonably creative until I saw the professionals really work at it, and my goodness, they're amazing. So offer your assistance. Hey, we have this new initiative rolling out. Is there any way that I can help you roll that out? How can I be a resource to you? Now, in a lot of cases, people will not jump on your offer right away. Hey, sometimes they will. But keep offering it. And eventually, 3 times, 4 times down the road, you'll have planted that seed enough times to where they'll actually say, okay, yeah, Michelle, well, what can you do? We need to do this. Oh, well, I can help put together a spreadsheet, or my team can help with the processing of this, or some aspect of it where you're a servant to them. It gets back to that servant leadership. If you want to show your skills, be a resource to other people. And that's one of the best ways to do that is simply offering up your services, Michelle. Hope that helps. Shirley asked the question, what's the best way to bring your team together as one? Well, Shirley, the first thing is to actually bring them together. If you have not done a team meeting in the past 7 months, then that's one thing that you can definitely do. Putting together monthly team meetings where you can just go through an agenda. And what I tell everybody about meetings, whether it's one-on-one meetings, whether it is team meetings, and you've all seen this before in regards to recurring meetings. Yes, the first one takes forever, but the second one is quicker, and the third one is even quicker. So I say monthly team meetings and people lose their minds. They're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be there for 3 hours. Well, yeah, you might be there for 3 hours the first time. But if you have another team meeting a month after that, you're going to only be there for an hour and a half. And then a month after that, you're going to be there for 45 minutes. Now, I know that those are extended periods and you would never meet with your team for that long. But that's how quickly things move down the ladder. So if you want your team to come together more, then bring them together. Now, you might not have the ability to do that. Well, then do a pre-shift in the morning where you have that stand-up meeting. Some call it a scrum. Some call it all kinds of different things. Some do it at the beginning of the day. Some people do it at 10 a.m. after people have handled a couple of things and gotten some momentum behind their day. But bring people together. It might only be a certain subset of your team, 1/5 of your team, 1/10 of your team, but you're bringing people together. Now then align them behind particular activities. This is where those potlucks where everybody brings in a dish for a particular day. St. Patrick's Day, everybody brings in something Irish. For Thanksgiving, everybody brings in something Thanksgiving here in the States. Whatever it happens to be, align people behind a particular activity. The simplest one I did, and people would love it. It breaks up the monotony of the workday, was simply everybody dress in a particular color. It was amazing. I'd say dress up in red, and somebody would come in with this 50s poodle skirt, and somebody else would come in with a hat that's red. And it gives people an opportunity to share an experience. So look for those opportunities for sports jersey dress up days. Those are great. If it's game day, on a Friday for a Sunday football game, then go ahead and have everybody dress in their jerseys on that particular day. But look for those opportunities to share experiences. Bring people together whenever you can. And if you can't bring everybody together, bring a subset of them together. But then I won't even say fun sometimes, but people like breaking up the monotony. Bring them together with different activities, and that's something that can really help out. Next question comes in from Vicky. Great to see you here, Vicky. We had a system implemented that went very wrong. Boy, we've all been there before. We now have more manual procedures than ever before. How do we get back to efficiency? This was an HR system. So you want to find a way to address the problem, all right? System implementations, and we've all been through them, and I've been through some horrible ones, go wrong for a whole bunch of different reasons. And one of the most important reasons is that the real reason for getting the system is never discussed. And people don't have the, I'll just say guts, to tell people that this system isn't going to be better for them. In a case of reservations, I had a reservation system roll out in the beginning of the aughts, whatever that is, the first decade of this century, and rolled out a reservation system to a reservation team. And this system's going to be great, this is going to be better. No, it isn't. It was slower because it was web-based as opposed to DOS-based. That was all very quick, very ugly, looked like 1980s. But man, did it just tick along. And so if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you don't even have to look at the screen. It went lightning fast. But the other one was like a web page where it would take 2 seconds to load another page and then another page, and that slowed everything down. And so everybody's going, well, no, this system's a complete failure. This doesn't work for us at all. The problem was they told everybody who touched this system that it was going to be great. It wasn't. It was there because it helped website integration when you were starting to move reservations to an online environment. It helped with back-end reporting and analytics. That was the reason. That was the return on investment for the system. So I would simply ask Vicky, first and foremost, what was the real reason for this system? All right, and that way you can get a feel for whether ripping it out and going back to the old way might be something that's doable, or whether you're in it for the long haul because it enables these certain functionalities. I know with HR systems, that's something that's happening a lot. You're moving a lot of the HR systems to the cloud, or you're integrating the HR systems with your payroll systems, with your other systems. And so those integrations are a benefit to the organization as a whole, but in some cases, in some departments, it slows everything down and you're taking 2 and 3 and 4 steps back. So when we talk about making things more efficient, okay, so that's all your background for it. When you want to improve something that isn't working, what you want to do is you want to get people starting to think about the solutions that are available. Right now, you perhaps, and certainly your team, is caught in that situation where this sucks. And you're reinforcing and trying to get that message across. And that's why it's important to do that background on where the system is and whether it's actually a failure or not. You want to get people away from wallowing in what's wrong with everything and start working towards solutions that make things better. What is the simplest thing that you can change that will make the current system that you have right now better? What procedure do you need to change? And really brainstorm it and say, hey, everything's on the table. This is a new environment for us. So we have the ability to start from scratch. And if that means that we are switching things around, if that means we're switching hours around so that somebody can do some task at the end of the day that sets everybody else up to work quicker in the morning, those are those sorts of things. You want to start bringing your team in to engage with as many solutions as possible. And I say start small because what you want is you want one win. When people see one simple win where there was an improvement, that you took an idea and you saw it through to fruition, they will be more apt to give you more ideas. And so this is something that's constant. This might be a bi-weekly meeting. Hey, how can we improve the efficiency in our operation and get back to where we were before? Or get as close as we can to where we were before? And start small, get that momentum going, but keep engaging the team and try to get them thinking of solutions as opposed to how much the system sucks. And that's flat out, I've been there myself, and probably most everybody who's watching here has been there before, where you've rolled out a new system and it does not work for you as well as the last system did. Doesn't mean it's a failure. There may be some other things going on. Find out what those other things are so that you can rest assured it ain't changing. And the reason that nobody is listening to you about how the system sucks is because it doesn't in this other area. Get them off of that line of thinking, get them focused on solutions, and then start rolling out some wins, Vicky. And that's the only way. I wish there was a magic bullet I had for you for this particular system. And switching back to the way things were, I've gone manual with systems before, so I know it sucks. But it's a situation where if you start taking those steps, it starts getting better and it feels better. If you're making progress towards something, it does get easier from a stress standpoint on things. Next question comes in from Israr, and is, if I start studying leadership for sustainability, what kind of job can I get? It depends on how you're taking it. And Brianna, great to see you here as well. It depends on how you take it. If you're sustainability is one of those hot button topics, and it's certainly a hot button industry that's going on right now. But I don't find that leadership is particularly different from a sustainability industry than it is for any other industry. So I think that you can move into that particular area, and I think it's an area of growth, which is great that you identify that. But don't necessarily isolate yourself there. Look for the experience, and then you can always move into those sustainability initiatives down the road. Hey, just so everybody knows, I'm kind of caught up on questions here, so if you have any, drop down into the comment section. I'll have them handle these things just about in real time. In the meantime, I do have 2 other questions I wanted to get to that I got offline, and if you have any questions that you don't feel comfortable dropping them into the public comments here, shoot me an email. I keep it anonymous. I'll tweak the situation around just a little bit so it isn't easily identified with yours, and go ahead and give you the advice that way. The next question is high turnover bad when you are getting rid of people who don't fit your organization? No, from a technical perspective, high turnover isn't necessarily bad. Certain industries have 100% turnover every year. That's just the way it is. But it gets back to the reasoning behind it. So 2 things in regards to particularly high turnover that can be bad. The first one is, I want to say obvious, and that is if you are hiring people who aren't the right fit for your organization, then you are hiring the wrong people and you have a hiring issue, not necessarily a turnover issue. So my question is what are the attributes that you're looking for? Are you getting clear on what kind of experience that you're looking for? What kind of experiences and accomplishments are you looking for from people? What environments do you want to see that people are working in where they are successful in your organization? And the easiest way to find that out so that you're hiring the right people, and this goes for everybody out there who wants to do better hiring, look at the people who are successful and look at your superstars in the organization. What behaviors do they emulate? Do they handle bad news particularly well? Do they handle defeat? If it's a sales, environment, do they handle defeat? Are they people that work well together? Are they people that communicate well together? Are they people with thick skins, with thin skins? What are they? What are their backgrounds? I used to hire a bunch of people from varying industries because, truthfully, the skill set matched. And so you want to cast a wide net, but you can be kind of specific with where exactly it is you're casting that net. So, no worries, Vin, I gotcha. So when you're experiencing high turnover, the first place I always look is what are you doing with hiring practices? Now, if you're talking culture, you need to be asking them about culture, and you need to have follow-up questions on that. Describe to me a time where you were dealing in an environment where there were multiple opinions on a particular issue, and how did you deal with that to come to one solution? If you want an environment where everybody has a voice, that's a question to ask. Have those follow-up questions on top of that. Okay, well, in those cases, how did it make you feel when your advice wasn't chosen? Or something along, what did you do with the people that didn't have their advice chosen? Something along those lines. So you have some follow-ups to those culture questions as well. The second thing that I wanted to address in regards to turnover is the culture itself. So you say they're not a right fit for the culture, but how are you building people up within that culture? Are you bringing people along? Are you finding ways, if you're looking for everybody's opinions on things, are you talking people through what happens when you give an opinion and it isn't the one that is selected? Are you talking people through dealing with the culture that you're creating? And that's one of the big things with culture is people think that, hey, I've got this great culture of openness, of inclusion, of whatever, and that's great. And they think that people are just going to naturally know how to deal with that culture, and that's not the case. So look to your hiring, and then I want you to look to that culture and see what you can do to help people along with that and be successful in that culture. And you really identify it. It all centers at the beginning. And so look at those first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month, and find ways to get people rolling with your culture. And I think that's something that'll help you have that turnover decrease just a little bit. High turnover isn't necessarily an issue. I loved having high turnover when people were moving on to other positions. But if they're getting kicked out because they're not a fit for the organization, that highlights a couple of different things and areas that you can address, and I hope that helps out. Vicky my son just graduated and he has a full-time job in IT. What advice would you give him for the workplace as a young man? What I tell people, Vicky, is that I can walk into an operation and I can spot who the leader is usually within 20 or 30 minutes maximum of observing a department. And more often than not, the leader is not the person that's sitting in the office or the person that has the title. It is the person that people come to when they have a crisis, when they have a question, when they need help dealing with a workload. That's often a line level employee that people go to. You want to be seen, if you want to move up in the organization and work on your leadership, you want to be a resource for everybody around you. I tell people that just start out in their careers, ask your boss every couple of weeks, hey, is there anything that I can help you with? Anything that you need taken off of your plate, anything you need an assist with, I'm here to help. You can do the same thing with your supervisor. You can do the same thing with your peers. If there's anybody in a different department, that gets a little bit sketchy sometimes, but look to be a resource. Those people that are resources to other individuals are the ones that are going to build up their leadership skills and move on in the organization. Isra, and I hope that helps out, but that's the number one thing, Vicky. Be a resource to those around you. Offer to help people when possible. Share your knowledge. Ask for their knowledge. In retrospect, you see these things and it's kind of basic, but really kind of highlight those, because too many times you get siloed and you just want to get your work done and do exceptional at your work. That's a given, but look to extend beyond your work to the work of others and being a member of the team. Israel follows up here. I'm working hard for my office, but I'm not getting good enough response or attention from my boss. But others getting good response and have good relations with. Israel, I'd actually flip this right back to Vicky's question here, and that is, ask your boss if there's anything that you can help with. Hey, just so you know, I'm looking to move up in the organization. I'd love to be getting, the higher profile projects. Is there anything that I can help you with, or any skills that I need to work on to ensure that those things happen? I would also kind of do an analysis of those people that are getting the good responses and are having the good relations with the boss. What specifically are they doing? What specifically are they particularly good at? Those are those things that then you need to work on, because your boss may give you no feedback, but you know what? Based on who they are getting those who's getting their attention and who's getting the sort of responses that you're looking for, you can kind of reverse engineer what's going on and what you need to work on. Then reach out. You can do Google searches for so many of these things. If you need to build up a skill, whether it's something like Excel, that works, or it's something like interpersonal skills. My goodness, you can get a ton of things online in regards to interpersonal skills, but look to identify a few of those things, but also reach out to your boss and ask them what they think and what they think what they think you can do, and to help them and to get a little bit more exposure. You can also do the same thing with the people that are getting the response, are getting the attention. Hey, if you need any help with that particular project that the boss just gave you, I'm more than willing to do that. You may get 0 credit for that, but eventually, if you keep doing the right things like that, it all comes to fruition and comes to a head. Okay, so be persistent with that. I have one last question, and I like this one. I got it offline, and I will still keep it anonymous, and that is, any advice for bringing some more life and some more excitement behind staff meetings? Monday morning meetings feel like a morgue, and I just love that, because, again, this is a situation we all have felt. So I'll tell you right now, I start off all of my workshops when I go into a company and do a development workshop. I start every single one of them with some sort of energizer team building exercise. And it can be a simple 5-minute exercise. You can Google these things. All right, simple 5-minute exercise that loosens people up, gets them energized, and helps them find something out oftentimes about the other people that they're working with. But just look for those simple activities, especially on a Monday morning where you're starting your work week. That's a great excuse to do that sort of thing. Maybe you do it just once a week. But I talked a lot, I think I talked yesterday about team building and how to bring the team together and what team building exercises to do. The most important thing isn't what team building exercises you do, but how consistently you do them. Too many times we recognize that we have an issue with team building and the team just isn't functioning well. And so we do one big push to get them on and get them going in that particular area, and sure, they improve, but then it wanes afterwards. You want to do those sorts of things consistently. I tell people, whether it is once a week or whether it is once a month, do some sort of team building activity. There are a ton out there. Just Google it. But yes, Monday morning meetings, go ahead. Do a little energizer to start out with. You know what? People might feel silly. You might not necessarily get the response that you want the first time that you do it. But you know what? The second or third time, after they've gone through it a few times, one of them's going to hit. They're going to start seeing the benefits. It's going to be something that's routine. And it may even be something they look forward to on a Monday morning. So it doesn't feel like you're working in a morgue. Not that I'm talking bad about anybody who works in a morgue. Next question comes in from Crystal. So good to see you here, Crystal. And it's, I enjoy your books. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do you have any on hiring, recruiting, and interviewing? I do not. I do handle, in the roadmap, I have a chapter on hiring, and that's something that certainly can be helpful, and you can catch little tidbits of it through the Manager's Diary series as well. The big thing, and I kind of went over it in regards to issues with turnover, and that is, get clear on what it is that you're looking for. The number one thing in hiring, and it leads to the recruiting and the interviewing, is taking a look at the candidates that you want. I want to say your ideal candidates, but take a look at the people who are great in the positions right now. And why are they great? What behaviors do they demonstrate? What skill sets do they have? Do they have Excel skills? Do they have analytical skills? What are the skill sets? So take those job responsibility lists that you have for the job and start putting, I want to say, people in your mind. Who emulates this? Does the person that's going to be sitting across from me in the interview, do they emulate Cameron in this area or Crystal in this area? So that kind of brings things together for you as far as the candidates that you are looking for. From a recruiting standpoint, and it informs your interviewing questions so that you can ask them about the most important things. Name me a time where you told somebody to do something and it didn't work out at all like you planned, and you had to be the one to pick up the pieces with the customer. If that's something that is very, a recurring instance, and it is in many industries, then that's something you need to ask about. And somebody needs to have an answer for that. And you need to be able to get at their thick-skinnedness and their ability to adapt and their ability to be a team player on those things. So really dive in, because that informs everything else. That gives you the interviewing questions. And when we talk recruiting, I want you to think outside the box. I like casting a very wide net. All right, so I would look at reservation people for a contact center, or operators for one of the huge Las Vegas hotels down on the Strip. And I'd bring people in from retail, from the restaurant industry. They've never worked on the phone before. They've never sat in a call center environment. But you know what they do? They talk to people all day. Those are people that have that skill set, and that's what they need to be able to do when you break it right down. They need to be able to talk to the right people. So really take a look at that. One last thing I'll mention in regards to recruiting, and this one is covered definitely in the roadmap, so take a look at that. But is your job, when we're talking recruiting, it is an advertisement. You want to put your best foot forward. You want to be realistic, don't get me wrong. But you want people to think that they are going to learn a bunch of great stuff that is going to help them in their career in this position and moving forward. You're going to relate to a culture that you want to have and that you want to focus, and that's going to help you bring in more applicants for you to select from. So I hope that's helpful. Again, check out that chapter in the roadmap. That'll have a few of these key points in there to help you out with. But that's something, looking at the people that you have that have been successful is one of the most important things you can do throughout the hiring process. All right, so I'll give about 10 more seconds for everybody to jump on here with any questions. I am putting up one of these questions every day from the last session or two that kind of jumps out at me. You'll notice on my Facebook feed, I've got some more of those out on blog posts where I just take kind of another look at it, maybe a little bit more of an in-depth look at it and kind of reconsider a few things. Those are a great resource to keep your mind thinking on leadership topics and keep yourself learning and thinking in those areas, and that just keeps working that leadership mind muscle to help you apply those principles to different areas and different situations. Situations might not match up that you hear about here, but you know what? You can take something from them and apply them to your situation. And that's the whole purpose behind these. So you'll see the links to the podcast here shortly after I finish this video and make some tweaks to it online there. I'd love to have you sign up for the podcast. Otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.